Hi, I'm Miko Peled, and I'm speaking to you from Palestine House of Freedom here in Washington, D.C. I have the privilege and pleasure to host Haitham Khureshi again. He is our history scholar, and we have a series that we call Mosaic, which is the history of Palestine. So thank you very much again for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And I encourage people to check out his social media videos on TikTok and YouTube, and he has a unique way of explaining Palestinian history, which is very succinct and fascinating. And it's always, because it's a mosaic, it's always a difficult question: what should we discuss at each particular time? And I like to watch your videos and then get ideas from that and see if we can kind of extend it. We always talk about more things than we decide to talk about up front. But I thought you did a really interesting video about the different celebrations. So the Nabi Musa one, which is very well known, the Nabi Reuben one, which I learned from you about. And also, we were going to talk a little bit about the Islamic heritage in Jerusalem, which is a huge topic, of course.
Yes.
Nabi Musa is not far from Jerusalem. It's right on the outskirts of Jerusalem, so maybe we can kind of include that as well. But I think, you know, people don't know that Jerusalem has this long and rich Islamic heritage.
Yes, it does.
It's always somehow associated with the Zionist mythology, but rarely people do people delve into the rich Islamic heritage.
Of course.
So let's start with that. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so Jerusalem actually in the Islamic faith used to be the first qibla, the first direction of prayer for Muslims actually, before it was switched to Mecca. And I feel like not many people know that, and it's just as a continuation of the Abrahamic faiths, just showing how important Jerusalem really is and how interconnected a lot of these faiths really were. So Jerusalem is considered the third holiest site, as it's believed that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, took on a journey, a night journey known as al-Isra wal-Mi'raj, to the site in the Far Mosque, or the Al-Aqsa Mosque, to pray with the other prophets. So that is a really big moment in Islamic history and the life of the Prophet, peace be upon him.
Right. And then, but in terms of the heritage, the architecture, the different Islamic groups, the different influences of Islamic rulers in the city, can you talk a little bit about that? I mean, it's very long. We're talking about 1,500 years of history.
Of course.
You know, the points that people more or less know is the Khalifa Omar coming to Jerusalem, Salah ad-Din coming to Jerusalem.
Yes.
But of course, there are many others that are not known.
Yeah, so, you know, each successive dynasty or empire has left their mark in Jerusalem in some way, whether it's maybe the shape of the domes being inspired by the old Byzantine days, domes being a new part and now very synonymous, especially with Islamic architecture. Adding to the styles of calligraphy, the doors, the fountains that are there. Each prominent caliphate or Islamic dynasty early on, especially the Fatimid Caliphate, which rose in the 9th centuries, just before the Crusades, they did a lot of renovations and a lot of maintenance when it came to the tiles that you can find on the Dome of the Rock. Even when you go into the Mamluk days with building a lot of different shrines or places to make wudu or ablution, the washing rituals that you have in Islam before prayer. And one of the most prominent ones you see from a Islamic dynasty would be the Ottoman Empire, with the current walls of Jerusalem being based on the Ottoman design and the Ottoman construction that happened in the 1500s, amongst many other layers that have happened even before Islam. But the current walls of Jerusalem are well known to be part of the Ottoman renovations.
So there's a line, I just, you know, the movie Kingdom of Heaven, which is the movie The Crusaders and Salah ad-Din. And at the very, very end of the movie, after Jerusalem has been destroyed, the war is over, and they surrender, the Crusades surrender. Salah ad-Din is negotiating with a representative of the Christians. And at the end, the Christian asks him, what is Jerusalem worth? And Salah ad-Din says, nothing. And then he walks away a few steps, he turns around and he goes, everything.
Yes.
And I think it's a sentiment that's out there, that exists in the Arab and Muslim world, that we don't have any appreciation, the people in the West don't have any appreciation for.
Yes.
Why is it so important? Is it only because of its of religious significance?
I would say religious significance is a big one, of course, but I think strategically, especially militarily, having such a central location between Europe, Asia, and Africa was very important. To have even, you're not too far away from the Mediterranean Sea if you drove even. If you control Jerusalem, you also at the time could have controlled other big centers in the Muslim world, such as Damascus, and being not too far away before we even had all these borders. And even the connections Jerusalem has had with other cities, so for example, Bethlehem. To conquer Bethlehem, you conquer the water supply. You take control of the water supply that feeds Jerusalem, pretty much. That was a big thing, a big part of strategy in capturing Jerusalem. And also having a connection to the Mediterranean with the port in Jaffa. Jerusalem, it did mean everything. It was power for a lot of families as well.
Yes, and it's also, when you look at the old city of Jerusalem, it doesn't compare to Jaffa or Akka or any of those. It's incredible.
Yes.
It's far more incredible than any of these other cities that played an important role. But I wanted to mention, you reminded me of something when you said that when you have Bethlehem, you control the water. One of the first orders given by the Israeli military after they took the West Bank was that the water belongs to the state of Israel.
Yeah.
That was one of the first things. So they control the water, and of course, that's one of the big reasons they wanted the West Bank. Can you talk a little bit more about the city itself, the population? What were some highlights in the history? And again, I know we're talking about over 1,500 years.
I can do my best.
But I'm sure that but there are periods that are significant. And when you walk through the old city of Jerusalem, of course, which is Jerusalem, there are, you can see the Mamluk influences. You can see all the different ones, and it's really a mosaic of Islamic history as well.
It is.
The city itself.
Yeah, and not even just with the main religions, but really even different schools of thought that you have. So, for example, within non-Muslims in Jerusalem, one of the big communities that really grew was, grew back since the time of Omar, was the Jewish community, who was not allowed to be in the city during the Roman Byzantine days. But the Caliph Omar allowed them to come back and resettle in the city. But a branch of that, you also have the growth of the Karaite Jews, who differ from the rabbinic Jews in terms of their thoughts on the Talmud, like the oral law. Within Christianity, you have, of course, like the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, which still can continue to flourish under Islamic rule. Pilgrims from all over the world still attended, still went to service there, even buying souvenirs there. You have,
as they do today.
As they do today. And within that, you have attractions and different rites between the Greek Orthodox, the Roman Catholic, the Armenians, who have their own quarter in Jerusalem as well, and a large history there. Coptic, Ethiopian, and the Syriac churches. Right. Now, within Islam, you have even different Sufi orders that have been attracted to Jerusalem, such as the Naqshbandi order, which many of those you can find from Central Asia as well. So when we say that there's 4 quarters of Jerusalem, really there's a lot of sub-quarters and little pockets. The 4 quarters was never really, it was very fluid. It was never strict until really the British Mandate period.
Right.
So you have places like the Afghan or Uzbek quarters, which have these Sufi orders in them. You even have a African quarter, which many people from different African nations today either came through different dynasties as soldiers, slaves, or pilgrims, even defending the Al-Aqsa Mosque during 1948 as well. So a lot of people have been attracted, and even a Moroccan quarter, or the Maghrebi quarter, was established just after the Crusades as a way for North African soldiers to establish residence in Jerusalem after fighting against the Crusades and liberating the city from them.
Right.
So a lot of people, Jerusalem, before and after Islamic rule has been so layered, and so many stories that can't be put into 4 quarters.
Yeah, and I've heard that before too, that the 4 quarters was really established by the Westerners that came to and really didn't see the fine mosaic that the city really represents.
It was really like the 1830s, slowly, with like the Orientalist views or doing biblical tours of it, that these 4 quarters were really established when there were Jews living in the Muslim quarter, Muslims living in the Jewish quarter, Christians living in the Muslim quarter.
Yeah.
So it's more like, how did the names really stick? So that's also like a big question that really only wanted to be solidified after the 20s during the British Mandate.
Right. And it's interesting that after the Islamic rule of Jerusalem, that's when Jews were allowed to return to the city. That's when the Jewish community there began to grow and prosper. The Christian community began to prosper.
Yeah.
And it was thanks to the Islamic conquest, to the fact that the Muslims came and they demonstrated that kind of tolerance.
Yeah, and one myth that many of the Zionists say is that basically all these Muslims from Arabia replaced the native population, when the amount of soldiers is not enough to replace an entire people like that. Really, the Arabization or spread of Arabic was earlier than the Islamization, you can say. As before the Crusades, the greater Syria, Levant region, especially Palestine, was still not majority Muslim until about the 1200s, really after the Crusades. So after Salah ad-Din's days. So in that time, believe it or not, even the geographer Al-Maqdisi mentioned that the Christians were basically the majority of Jerusalem, even in the prime Islamic periods.
And they spoke, and people. So when did Arabic? You started saying when they started speaking Arabic.
So Arabic was
so pre-Islam.
So Arabic was Arabic with the rise of Islam was spread faster than Islam adopting Islam was. Muslims did not really become the majority in that region until about the 1200s. So about 500 to 600 years into the rise of the caliphates did the majority of the population become Muslim.
Right. There's a story, again, we're talking about the Khalif Omar. There's a story that I heard from a very good friend of mine, a Palestinian Muslim, that the Khalif Omar came and he wanted to know where was the site of the Jewish temple.
Yes.
And nobody knew.
Mm-hmm.
And then he found a Jewish beggar on the street.
His name was Ka'b al-Ahbar.
Okay.
Who is he's believed to be a Jewish convert to Islam from Arabia, who Omar is said to have consulted about where the establishment, where was the site of your temple.
Right. And the story that I heard was that it was the garbage dump of the city. And then the Khalif and this poor beggar went on their hands and knees to clear the site.
Yeah.
And then that was the reason for building the Dome of the Rock, so that that space would always be remembered and considered sacred.
Yes, even even when the Caliph Omar went to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre and the leader of the church, Sepharonius, when Omar asked him about, so where are the city's Jews? He said they're not here. There are none, and Omar was shocked by that. So, and even with that, in terms of tolerance, Omar chose not to pray in the Church of Holy Sepulchre because wherever the first site that the Caliph prayed would immediately be thought of as a mosque.
Right.
So, out of respect, just across from that church, you have a Mosque of Omar.
Right. And the Mosque of Omar, was it built by Omar? Or was it something that was named after him?
It was named after him. So many of the earliest mosques, honestly, all across the Islamic world, might have been, their early names would have been Mosque of Omar. Even the region of the Al-Aqsa compound, the early designs where maybe they were made of wood, something not too grand, would have been called the Mosque of Omar, or maybe you'll see it in some Western sources as Mosque of Omar before its upgrades.
Right. So this is really important conversation, I think, because as we speak about these, and there's so many sites within Palestine that really commemorate the Islamic heritage of Palestine as a whole, and they're being chipped away, they're being destroyed, they're being allowed to fall into disrepair by the Zionists in order to erase that. And we know there's a very strong push to take over Al-Aqsa, the entire Al-Aqsa compound,
Yes.
and destroy it eventually and build something else. So understanding and knowing this history and understanding and knowing this rich heritage of the city, of all of Palestine, but we'll focus on the city right now because it is Jerusalem, is incredibly, incredibly important.
Yes.
Talk some more a little bit about, because one of the things that I've heard many times Zionists say is, well, Jerusalem's not even mentioned in the Quran. Jerusalem is really not an important city from Islam. They took it from us, and so on and so forth. But that's not true.
No, it wouldn't be true because even if the word Jerusalem or like let's say in Arabic Ursalem or Urshalim or one of these terms at the time wasn't mentioned, the Al-Aqsa Mosque is mentioned.
Right.
From as the ayah in the Quran says, from the Masjid al-Haram to al-Masjid al-Aqsa.
Right.
And that was the direction that Muslims prayed towards before it was shifted to Mecca.
Right.
And it's believed that during the Prophet's night journey, that this is the time where the direction would shift.
Right. And let's talk a little bit about some of the celebrations, some of the festivals.
Yes.
Was there anything in Jerusalem that you can tell us about, that we can talk about?
Yeah, well, the most prominent festival, the biggest festival in Palestine, did start in Jerusalem. And when I say start, as in the path, the pilgrimage path, starts in front of the Damascus Gate in Jerusalem. And that was the Prophet Moses, or the Nabi Musa festival. This festival is said to have roots from the days of Salah ad-Din and the Ayyubid period. The Nabi Musa shrine is a bit north of the Dead Sea, so not too far from Jericho. And many people would take a path, people from Al-Khalil, from Jerusalem, from Nablus, and from Bethlehem would meet where they would gather. Also, they would take turns. They would gather in front of the gates of the walls of Jerusalem with their banners that have their Sufi orders on it, maybe Moses' name, or the towns that they were from, the little villages they were from, or the cities. And of course, like maybe verses of the Quran as well. And they would take this path to the shrine or the site where it's believed that Moses was buried. And this pilgrimage is called a ziyara, or a visit, where people collect barakah, where they collect blessings. So it's believed that by many that if you go to the site where it's believed a prophet, a very venerated one at that, where they're buried, then you can have even more good deeds with you. And so this also became a prominent shrine for Sufi orders, as I said, where they play all types of music. You can have like tambourines, drums, singing chants, and it's one of the biggest festivals in the sense of not only does it have a religious element, there is a secular element where some of these festivals were like carnivals, where kids could go to play. There would be songs recited, poetry. And of course, like more in the modern day, during the British Mandate, be anti-colonial statements, sentiments against the Zionist movement and the British Mandate. So, this is a festival that occurred for centuries, always starting in Jerusalem. And to some extent has been either limited or stopped at first by Jordan, when they annexed the West Bank. Later by Israel, and now very little to no more does it happen, even though the site is under Palestinian Authority. But
you can't get there.
Which can't really get there.
All these other,
no, it's like a little island in the vast area sea full of settlements, especially like Ma'ali Adumim around. But the building of the shrine, and like I said, every dynasty contributed in some ways. What the Mamluks in the 1200s contributed was shrines, in a way to get rid of the Crusader influence. So they built shrines everywhere. Everywhere where it's believed a prophet or a companion or a relative would be. But some people also built these types of shrines for burial grounds of a prominent person from their village. So a little cube structure with a dome. So the current structure of the Nabi Musa shrine is believed to have been built under the rule of Dahir Baybars, the Mamluk Sultan, in the 13th century, which is the structure that we see today.
Oh, wow. See, again, people have no appreciation for the just the richness and the historical significance of these shrines, of these monuments.
And this is a Palestinian pilgrimage in the sense that it wasn't anyone else coming. These were cities like I said, Bethlehem, Jerusalem, Al Khalil, Nablus. It was very local within, especially the hills area. But there were also other festivals, but none of them as big as the Nabi Musa festival.
So after 1948. Nabi Musa was within the West Bank.
Yes, so it was under Jordanian control.
So obviously Palestinians in 1948 couldn't access it, but Palestinians within that area couldn't take it,
So it happened at a limited capacity, but the fear by the Jordanian monarchy is that just like it was in the British days, it would be a site of nationalistic sentiment. Because at the time,
it's almost inevitable, really.
It's almost inevitable because already in the early 50s, the first king of Jordan, Abdullah I, was killed by a Palestinian in Jerusalem in Al-Aqsa for collusion with the Zionist forces, where the so-called armistice line would be drawn that this would be a way to have Jerusalem under the dominion of the Hashemites. And so having another very prominent festival where different rulers facilitated this, it was of course going to be like the British days where they would chant very nationalistic sentiments, and so it was limited. It was very, very limited at the capacity that it wouldn't be at the same level as it was.
What were some of the other festivals?
So the second biggest festival was the Nabi Rubin festival, or the Prophet Reuben's festival, which was near the areas of Ramla and Jaffa, actually.
So that's within 1948.
That's within 1948. Now, this festival, similar to the Nabi Musa festival, of course not as big, but this was also a time where people from different coastal areas were doing it. Nabi Musa, think of it as pilgrims are coming from the hills. They're coming from the hill areas. The Nabi Rubin one is, no, we're coming from more coastal areas, Jaffa, Ramle, even Gaza to an extent as well, all taking part in this festival where, again, there were some Sufi or religious elements to it with some of the chants and prayers. But again, there was also a secular element where people were setting up shop for food. There was cafes, restaurants. People were showing off crafts. They were selling their goods. Kids were playing games. Also, people would bathe camels. And, you know, there's one thing that there's some forgotten traditions where some of these festivals were also used for circumcision rituals as well, where they would bring their little babies there.
Probably for more blessing,
more blessing, collecting barakah. Yeah, so it was generally like a fun time, so much so that in a text about these saints and shrines by a Palestinian ethnographer, Tawfiq Kan'an, who documented a lot of these shrines, he mentioned an anecdote where there was a saying that women would tell their husbands that you either take me to Nabi Rubin to take me to the festival, or you divorce me. So it was a fun time.
So there was a village, Nabi Rubin?
Nabi Rubin was a village, yes.
Was it small? Was it large?
It wasn't too big. There was a lot of Bedouin families around the area, but of course, a lot of these areas would be ethnically cleansed, including Nabi Rubin after 1948. Some of them even after May of 48. So many of them would become refugees into the Gaza Strip. So that's another thing that the Nakba affected Palestinians with, is it's not just the ethnic cleansing or moving of people, it's destroying cultural moments like these. Like, this is a very forgotten festival, and I think other festivals are forgotten. Even some of us Palestinians who lived in the West Bank, we don't really know about festivals that happened in the West Bank at one point, before there was a West Bank. Yeah. But even in places we can reach, the collective memory of it is slowly fading as well.
So the shrine of Nabi Rubin is gone?
The building is there. It had a minaret for a while, and I don't remember when the minaret was taken down, but today it's used as a little synagogue. Today, as of, I believe, I want to say 2012. So more recent.
Are there any other festivals that you can
one I can mention that's really interesting, and this is a very forgotten site. It was called Wadi Namel, or the Valley of the Ants. And so this one was near Asqalan, or Al-Majdal area.
I was going to say if there was something further south for that.
But this is even closer to the coast.
Right.
So in the Asqalan area, there was actually a shrine of the head of Imam Hussein, who's very, very venerated in Shia Islam.
Right.
You could say it's the biggest, or maybe only prominent Shia Muslim site in Palestine. And so this is among the sites where the legend holds that the shrine of Imam Hussein, who was killed in Karbala. Some believe that his head was taken to Damascus just out of spite toward, by the Umayyads against the family of the Prophet, who didn't want to pledge allegiance to him. But then now there's some theories that state that the head was reunited with his body in Karbala in Iraq, which is a very significant site for Shia Muslims. But there was another theory that stated that it was brought to Asqalan in Palestine.
Why Asqalan?
There's another theory where there were people that petitioned the Khalifa at the time in Damascus to send it over there. And that's what makes it really weird, is that there's theories of, did it reunite with the body in Iraq? Or is it in Egypt today, where it's believed that it was taken from Ascalon to Egypt for safety from Crusader attacks, because the Crusaders did do sieges on Ascalon.
Right.
But even even with or without the head, that place still was prominent. And
what's the name of the place? What's the name of the shrine?
So it was called Mashhad Hussein.
Oh, it was called
Mashhad Hussein. In English, you could look up like Shrine of Imam Hussein's head.
But why would they have a Shia Muslim, site on the coast of Palestine?
Yeah, so that gets to the other big caliphate that did follow Shia Islam, and that was the Fatimids. The Fatimid Caliphate really rose out of North Africa, I think around modern-day Tunisia, and they ended up making Cairo their capital. So, people think that, Egypt after the pharaohs was insignificant. No, it still was the capital of a lot of dynasties that took over. And so the Fatimids took over Greater Syria, and especially the southern Levant with Palestine, and they built a shrine over there. It said that they built a shrine over the site where supposedly the Imam Hussein's head was. But later on, with the Crusaders, you had fear that this would be destroyed. And interestingly enough, it was not destroyed by the Crusaders. And even Salah ad-Din had to take transfer the minbar from there to the Ibrahimi Mosque in Al-Khalil. So
and it's still there.
It's still there.
It's still there. I mean, but in the
But so it's called the minbar.
I didn't realize that it came from there.
Yeah, and even in the calligraphy and the inscription, I believe it states where it was made.
Why did he move it?
Out of safety, but also I think it's also to establish like Al-Khalil again as the second holiest place after Jerusalem within Palestine. Right. But the shrine still remained, and similar to Nabi Rubin, like we said, now you have people from the coast, especially Ascalon, going to this festival. Again, people would bring their animals. There would be parties, celebrations, poetry, songs, and that also was no longer happening after the Nakba. In 1950, I believe, under Moshe Dayan's orders, he had the site destroyed.
I see. It's interesting. The story about the head, it reminds me of the story about Maimonides, who, of course, still is revered in Egypt.
Yes.
But so there's a site of his burial in Cairo. Yeah. And there's also a site of his burial in Tabariya in Palestine. Yeah. And so you've got this, you've got this claim of a holy, highly revered person in more than one place.
Exactly.
So it's not uncommon.
And sometimes it'll be with a few cities over of the difference.
Yeah. So but going back to this idea that Zionism is not just about replacing the people, it's about erasing the history, erasing the culture. Yeah. I remember seeing the Mosque of Omar in Tabariya, which I believe was built by Dahir Omar that we discussed in the past. It's just sitting there in disrepair. It's almost like they're waiting for it to be destroyed on its own, so they can't say that they destroyed it. Right. But as you go through the country, there are so many significant landmarks that represent that Islamic and Arab heritage, and it's just, they're disappearing.
Exactly. And, some of these shrines, and they were built in a way where it's a continuation of the old as well, where, even where it said that even Nabi Rubin, that was a site of a once Canaanite temple. And so, people follow a lot of, people don't realize a lot of traditions are like pagan in origin or go back 4,000 years, let's say. And sometimes we might not know why we do certain things, but it's just a collective memory that is passed down. With a lot, especially with a lot of religious sites or chants or, why we eat the way we do.
Right.
So, that's the thing with even the idea of indigeneity or stewardship of land or continuity is that, with time, things get passed down in some way. It doesn't mean that new layers aren't added, but culture is something that it doesn't stop. It is continuous.
Unless it's destroyed.
Unless it's destroyed,
Which
yes.
is what the Zionists are doing.
Exactly.
Yeah, which is, of course, beyond terrible, and it's such a loss to humanity because this is it's a long and rich history, and the monuments in Palestine and particularly in Jerusalem are so incredibly, beautiful. Even if you don't care for the history, if you don't care for the religious aspect of it, the beauty of these places, the beauty of the city, the beauty of Al-Aqsa, the entire compound. Mm-hmm. And I think I told you this. I went on some tours with settlers, just to see what they do and what their conversations are about, and it's really horrifying. It's really horrifying. So it's, like I said several times, it's important to talk about this, to remind people about this, and to bring people back to this reality of there's no status quo. There's a process of destruction that's taking place.
Of course.
You mentioned the Ibrahimi Mosque. The settlers just got their, now they took the authority away from the Muslim Waqf and they gave it to the settlers.
Yes.
So now the settlers are there and so forth. And it's a crying shame. Let's go back to Jerusalem one more time. Are there any, and I don't know if you know this, but are there any significant celebrations or events or days that connect, that are part of the Jerusalem culture that you can think of?
That are specifically Jerusalem, I'm not sure outside of the celebrations that can be had in other cities.
Right. Because I remember, I think again, I may have told you this, I grew up in Jerusalem. I never knew anything about any of this. Yeah. But one time, I was waiting for a friend right outside Damascus Gate, and it was Ramadan. Mm-hmm. And that was the first time I saw Ramadan night.
Okay.
And what it's like at the plaza in front of the gate. It was this incredible festival.
Yes.
And the lights and the food and the children and the dancing and the Sufi came to perform. And it was unbelievable. And I thought, this is what's happening. First of all, it was really beautiful. It was incredible. And I couldn't believe I didn't even know about it growing up just a few kilometers away. Yeah. But imagine if this was allowed to continue, like you were saying, with the Nabi Musa, with all these other places that had these incredible cultural events and religious events and commerce events, and that's it, they're gone.
Yeah, and even within, especially like some of these Islamic areas, like the Mamluks, some of the biggest places to gather were built under them, such as some of the markets, like Khan al-Zayt, let's say, or Al-Qattanin, like those streets. So these streets, these markets are so significant within Jerusalem culture. They are very prominent, and these were built under some of the Islamic dynasties. So this city is so layered, whether it's before Islam, pagan days, or even before, even just trying to find water, it has always been a significant city where that's always been layered instead of just destroying completely.
Right. So you were talking about Tawfiq Kanaan. Can you talk about him some more? Yeah,
so Tawfiq Kanaan is probably one of the most interesting Palestinian figures that I've ever learned about. So he was known to be a prominent doctor, and so much so with all his work that he ended up curing leprosy in Palestine, a really big epidemic of it, which of course, like in the 1910s, that was a really big problem globally.
Yeah. Right.
So, he was multilingual. He was fluent, of course, in Arabic, being born in Beit Jala, just outside of Bethlehem. He also knew German, going through German schools.
So he was born in the late
Born in
19th century.
1880s,
Okay, so
and
he lived
then
through the
died in
20th century.
1964.
Wow.
Yeah.
So when you say he cured leprosy, do you know anything more about that?
I know a lot of his research because his career was as a doctor. Like
Yeah.
that was his main career. Even worked with Jewish doctors as well.
at the time,
And as he was also fluent in German. He also had a German wife, which is really interesting. But
Well, there was a German presence in Jerusalem.
There's the
German-
Schneller School. I think he attended that.
There's a few German schools, and there's also the German neighborhood,
Yeah.
which is in which is just again, it's in West Jerusalem or
Yes.
Southwest Jerusalem. Yeah.
Yeah, so he was really intelligent, honestly, with a lot of his research, studying diseases, but especially tropical diseases. But yeah, leprosy and helping to eradicate that in Palestine, that was one of his.
That's huge.
But believe it or not,
But that's not what he's famous for.
But that's not what he's famous for,
Yeah,
which is crazy.
Yeah.
So his famed work and one of the little things he's known for is the amount of amulets he's collected. He's collected hundreds and hundreds of amulets he's acquired that have.
So he was an archaeologist of sorts.
He was a Renaissance man, we could
Right,
say.
yeah.
He like collections of coins and amulets from North Africa to Anatolia, Europe, Iraq, Arabia. Everywhere, and I would say he was pretty well traveled too.
And where are all those now? Do you know?
I believe there's a good amount of them in the Birzeit Museum or Birzeit University's museum. I'm not sure if any other ones have been lost to time, but I know that Birzeit University does have a collection of
his
them.
thing. And you were mentioning a book, a very thick
Yeah.
book that he wrote.
So the one, I guess maybe why he's one of my favorites is this book called Muhammadan Saints and Sanctuaries in Palestine. And this
Muhammadan, how Islam, what you call Islam.
which is how a lot of the West refer to as Muslims, so followers of Muhammad.
Yeah.
And it documents a lot of these shrines that he's visited all across of Palestine. Little tombs, whether they're for actual prophets, companions of them, or like I said, local chiefs in the region. Maybe a local chief's important to a village. And again, a lot of these shrines, you'll notice if something was a shrine, if it has more of like a cube shape and a dome feature at the top. Designing them kind of like mosques, I guess, showed that this was somewhat important of a place. And, a lot of villages, believe it or not, didn't really have mosques, a central mosque in their village like we have today. They might have had to go really far to a city. But having a shrine there was kind of the closest thing they had to it. And
I'm thinking, it reminds me, I know Nabi Saleh well because I've got so many, some of my best friends there. But Nabi Saleh, that's what the shrine looks like, exactly like you described. There's the dome and then there's the square space.
Exactly.
Where people can
and there's
worship
so
or
many of them
whatever.
scattered around of so many different names, whether it's Saleh, the actual Islamic prophet Saleh, or just another guy named Saleh, or somebody may have been a big fan of Saleh and decided, I'm going to make something for him.
Right.
All cases existed. Any case you can think of, it probably existed. And the thing is, I think a lot of these traditions that people had, and he was a Christian, but documenting all these Muslim traditions and festivities.
So all of this is in this book.
All of this is in this book.
And what is the title again?
Muhammadan Saints and Sanctuaries in
And
Palestine.
it exists in English and in Arabic?
It exists in English, Arabic, and I believe German, which he was also fluent in. So it really covered so many things to the point of chants that people had, ways people would pray, little sayings people had, types of foods they would bring, offerings maybe, little little ceremonies they would do, and it would also even state that some of this might not be Muslim in nature, but really has pagan origins in it.
It's part of Palestinian culture.
It's part of Palestinian culture,
beyond religion,
and beyond religion, and again, part of the indigeneity of people is a collective memory or past memory of things. So even if people don't know why they're there, they just know that it feels right to be here. So maybe some of these shrines were built on the sites of pagan areas, or people built what they thought was special that they could pray at. Because again, mosques, unlike today, were not readily available in small villages. And so they would talk about ceremonies of like little singing, chanting, circumcision ceremonies.
So all of this is documented in
all of this is in this book.
And I wonder if he wrote it thinking, seeing the early 20th century and seeing how Palestine was being destroyed, first, taken by the British and then by the Zionists.
Yes.
And because now that we know so much of this is lost, documents what was.
Yes,
which is incredibly
and this is all
valuable.
this is all in like the early British Mandate as well. So he didn't really see his the next wave of his homeland falling after 48. In this book, of course, he lived past 1948.
But he wrote it before.
But he wrote it.
When was it published?
I believe it was published in the 1930s.
Okay, yeah. So just before this catastrophic.
Before partition plans, really.
And do you know where he lived after 1948?
So he lived in the Jerusalem area. Yes, so he was born in Beit Jala and lived in Jerusalem, and he ended up dying in what became East Jerusalem.
I see. But in 60, you said
64, so it's still under Jordanian authority. Yes.
Not occupied by Israel yet. Wow, that is fascinating, and I want to encourage people to check this out, if only because there's it's what remains of what used to be, and again, and I believe we should envision Palestine post-Zionism, a liberated Palestine. It would be interesting to see if some of these traditions can be brought back, if some of these things can be rebuilt.
Yeah, and maybe as well as some of people with collective memory of having a shrine, maybe they don't have a memory of. So what is this building? I know the name, but who is this person or why is it here? This book will talk a lot about that. Even if he states that it's not very well known, but local tradition says this, at least we have a recent collective or local memory of that.
And just before it was destroyed.
Yeah, and these are all different villages. How unique, how even different villages had their own little center.
Yeah. And again, this is, if you want to rebuild a mosaic, it's great to have a book like that that describes the mosaic in detail so it can be rebuilt, recreated.
It's amazing.
And I think that's, doing everything we can to end this dark chapter in this long and glorious history of Palestine so that it can go back and being the tolerant mosaic that it was. Having a book like that is just invaluable. So, like I said, I strongly recommend people get it. It's probably out of print, but you could probably find it.
You could definitely find it online. I have the full PDF version.
You do, yeah.
So you can download it.
Yeah. And again, bring back that mosaic. So again, thank you so much, and we'll see you next time at our next Mosaic History of Palestine talk.
Thank you, everyone.